Hello, everyone. Welcome to this latest episode of the Movie Crusaders. My name's Sean Wasserkrug, and today we are going to be talking about the latest MCU film to actually hit theaters. Actually, the first MCU film to hit only theaters since Spider-Man: Far From Home back in 2019. We are talking about Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings. For me, in terms of anticipation for this film, this is probably one of the least anticipated MCU films I have been preparing for. I don't know Shang-Chi. Just like before Iron Man and Thor and Captain America came out, like I had heard of them, but I wasn't like a huge comic book fan of these characters. Like my comic book brain at the time, or still to this day for the most part, is X-Men, Batman, Spider-Man. So I really didn't know who Shang-Chi was. And then when the first trailer came out, it didn't really blow me away. It didn't make me excited for it. Now, granted, it is MCU and Disney, so I only watched the teaser and then the very first trailer, and then I stayed away from everything else because they tend to give away way too much. So I only had those two like little instances of reference. Plus, I didn't read up on the Shang-Chi character or anything like that. The only thing I knew, obviously, based off the title, is that the Ten Rings are coming back, which are characters or a terrorist group that we knew from Iron Man 3. But yeah, I really went into this one like I was going to see it, obviously, because it's an MCU film, because I think we all go see MCU films now because you don't want to miss out a chapter of the story. But I really went with the lowest of low expectations. Just kind of like, we'll see how it is. I'm not super excited for it. In terms of the actual plot of Shang-Chi, you follow Shang-Chi, or in this case, Sean, played by Simu Liu. And I apologize first off. I'm going to butcher some of these names. I'm really not good with these names, so I apologize beforehand. But we follow the character of Sean, who he goes by Sean in the U.S. He has kind of ran away from home. He's estranged from his father and the rest of his family because of who his father is, which we'll get to that. And he's got his best friend, Katie, played by Aquafina. And one day they are attacked by a bunch of assassins on a bus. And thus starts the story of this world that Sean is about to basically open up the eyes of Katie into what his life really was before she knew him. Obviously, there's a lot of story. It's basically the origin story of Shang-Chi. You're going to follow a lot of the similar beats that you're going to get from an MCU origin film, but Shang-Chi does some things that we have never quite seen in an MCU film before. What works in the film, personally, there's a lot that works in Shang-Chi because, frankly, I had a blast watching Shang-Chi. Definitely exceeded my expectations. Like I said, I went in with low expectations and it blew them away. I think a lot of people are going to be pleasantly surprised when it comes to Shang-Chi as a film. First things first, the action. The martial arts action in this film is hands down the best we've seen in the MCU to date. The choreography of these fight scenes are gorgeous and beautiful, and some of them feel like a dance. And when I say that, I mean that in a good way, not in a negative way. For instance, the very, very first action sequence we see in the film, or first real hand-to-hand fighting we see, is from Win Yu, played by Tony Leung, who is Shang-Chi's father, and their mother, Fala Shen, who plays Li. And that whole fight sequence is beautifully shot, beautifully choreographed. It is a dance of them getting to know one another and kind of falling in love through this fight. And it is a beautiful scene in this film and a great way to kind of start off this story, because the movie starts off with Lee basically telling a young Shang-Chi how her and her father met and her father's story and his father's history. And there are other fights similar to this in the film, but this is basically the first fight that kind of starts you off and then follows up with the bus fight, which I think everyone's seen part of the bus fight in the trailers. That bus fight is awesome. And the great thing that really works with this action and the choreography is that Simu Liu and Tony Leung, they know martial arts, so it is them doing these fight scenes. You are seeing their faces front and center. It's not like Iron Fist where everything is like from the back, or dark lit settings or stuff where you can kind of know that it's not really the actor playing Iron Fist, who I'm blanking on his name right now, doing the scenes. They make sure that you can tell that it's Simu Liu and Tony Leung and Michelle Yeoh, obviously, doing all the choreography. And some of these fights are just awesome to watch. The bus fight scene, which feels very similar to Speed in a mindset, which is a fun little tip of the hat. There's a scaffolding fight, which is kind of reminiscent a little bit to Rush Hour 2. That's really awesome to watch. Probably one of the best martial arts fight sequences MCU has to date. There's also another one with a it's kind of connected with the scaffold fight, but there's another one where they're up against a big neon billboard, which looks a lot like, for me, reminded me of Skyfall. All these sequences and all these fights look awesome and look very fun, and you're going to be on the edge of your seat watching these fights, because just the uniqueness and the different kinds of things they do are definitely something you have not seen in an MCU film to date. The music of the film also is a huge part of this. A lot like how the soundtrack for Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse really kind of carries the film and adds more life to it. The music does that on its own. You have, obviously the actual songs of the film that kind of gives you more kind of the feel of Shang-Chi and Aquafina's character Katie, but the actual score of the film really kind of adds something to it that we have not seen in an MCU film to date, and the music is really well done as well. Stories and themes. The story, you're going to get kind of the similar beats from an MCU story because it is an origin film, and you are going to see some story elements in this film that you have seen in other films prior based off of these characters and what the world is. In terms of themes, you obviously have the ripple effect between a father and son. You have this ongoing theme of your destiny. What are you destined to do? How did you know that this is what your life was leading you down? Because that's something that really Aquafina and Sean or Shang-Chi are running through, mainly Aquafina, where she just doesn't know what her purpose is and what she's supposed to do with her life. And she's astounded by certain people who have found that and know what their purpose is and what they're going to do with the rest of their life. And that's kind of one of those things, especially with Shang-Chi, is that he can either keep running from his destiny and everything that's happened in his past life, which they do a really good job of integrating the flashbacks into this film. They don't try to exposition dump everything in the beginning, which they do. You do get exposition kind of dumpage of Win-Woo in the beginning, and you find out certain things that I'm going to try not to mention in this, that is like, oh damn, okay, that really explains his character. But the themes, I mean, you run through guilt, you run through loss, obviously family trauma and family rifts are all a part of this as well. So the story themes are believable, and they're real dug in deep, and there's something that's really going to make you feel and care about all these characters. The acting, everyone does a solid job in the film. Simu Liu does a great job as Shang-Chi. He was probably the one that I was the most worried about, because I didn't know the actor. I hadn't seen him in anything. And from the few people that I have spoken to who have known him from other stuff, he wasn't someone who apparently had a lot of charisma. He felt very dry to a lot of people. I did not see that in this film. I think he and Aquafina gel incredibly well together. They look like they have a lot of fun. He just seems like a really cool, chill guy and really good charisma. He's definitely a character that you could actually see yourself hanging out with in the MCU. Unlike someone like a Captain America or a Tony Stark, you wouldn't ever really be hanging out with those characters. Shang-Chi, you could hang out with this guy. You could party with this guy. He's just that chill and kind of cool of a character. And I think Simu Liu does a great job playing him. Aquafina, she was the one I was the most hesitant about coming to this film. I don't know why I always do this to myself, but I always feel like Aquafina is always going to overtake the film with her comedy to the point where it's going to become borderline annoying. And I've always felt this way, but every time I see her, for the most part, she does a great job. I felt that way about Raya and the Last Dragon. I thought that she was going to overtake the film and ruin it, and she was actually one of the better parts of the film. Raya and the Last Dragon was one of my favorite films of the year so far. And in this film, she's obviously the comedic relief. Some of her jokes hit, some of them don't, but she does not overtake the film. She is a nice number two to Shang-Chi, and she doesn't try to make it Aquafina's movie. She knows that this is Simu Liu's film, and she is going along with the ride with him, and she does a solid job playing his supporting actress in the film. Tony Leung as Wenwu, he is going to be one of the characters that you're going to want to pay attention to. Like in terms of origin films, the villains usually are kind of the weakest part. Because their characters are not usually very well developed, because we're so focused on trying to get the hero the most story time to build them up. Wenwu's story is right up there with some of the best villains in the MCU, along with Killmonger and Loki and Thanos. You see his story before you see Shang-Chi's, and you see the hills and valleys that he has gone through as a character, and the stuff that he has done. Not all good, not all bad, but then you see how his story has developed through the film, and he is probably the richest character in the movie, and his motivations and his reasonings for why he's doing certain things. It ranks right up there with Thanos and Killmonger. With, yes, I understand why he's doing it. I can't even say personally, if it was up to me, that I wouldn't be doing the same thing if I was in his shoes, which makes his character more full, because there's so many more layers to the villain character in this film because of that. And he's easily going to be one of the best MCU villains, basically out of this film. He's definitely in my top 5. And I think Tony Leung does a phenomenal job playing Wenwu. Fala Chen as Lee, Shang-Chi's mother. I enjoyed every scene that she was in. I wish we would have gotten more of her in the film, but every time I got to watch her, I enjoyed her immensely. Michelle Yeoh is always awesome. I mean, has there ever really been a bad Michelle Yeoh performance? I don't think there is. She plays Yang Na, which is Lee's sister. And when she's on the screen, I mean, she just has that commanding presence. Obviously, her fight scenes are also fantastic. I mean, we've been watching her since, for me, Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon. And Michelle Yeoh does not disappoint here. She is, yes, for the most part, kind of the exposition dump of the film, but it's Michelle Yeoh. You're going to listen to anything Michelle Yeoh has to say, and when they do let her fight, it is a joy to watch. In terms of the other two villains of the film, you got Florian Munteanu, who plays Razor Fist. Maybe people will know him as Ivan Drago's son in Creed 2. And then you also got Andy Lee, who plays Death Dealer. Both of them, in terms of action sequences, are very fun to watch and enjoyable to watch. Both of them probably did need a little more story and character development to make their villains a little more fleshed out, because they do just kind of feel like big, bulky guy with a sword for an arm and mass, like ninja guy. Especially Death Dealer. I really wanted to know more about Death Dealer, and we really just didn't get enough story of them outside of just being Henchman 1, Henchman 2. And then we got Manger Zhang, who plays Yaling, which is Shang-Chi's sister. I really liked her character. I really enjoyed her character, but I also felt like her character needed a little bit more in terms of character. Like, she's one of those where, show me, not tell me kind of characters. And she is kind of balances that thin line. I kind of wish there was a little more show and less tell, especially with once she grew up, because a lot of it is just, yeah, I went and did this. And I kind of would have loved to have seen a little bit more about her character and how her character came from when Shang-Chi last saw her to where he sees her now. I would have loved to have seen a little bit more of that character beat. Her character's great and she's enjoyable. I just wanted a little bit more from her. I wanted to see more from her, which is a good thing, because I would rather want more than not want to see enough of her. In terms of the films, the first act is breakneck pace, fast. Second act, obviously, is where the exposition really starts to get a little heavier, so it's a little bit slower. It's not boring, but when you're going fast with the action in the first act and then you slow it down in the second act, I can see a lot of people starting to kind of get a little antsy in their seats. But the third act, which I'm not going to say anything about it because that is one of those things that you just kind of need to go into. It is a little CG heavy, kind of like you got with Black Panther, where you had two Black Panthers CG fighting each other instead of seeing Chadwick Boseman and Michael B. Jordan fighting. But there are these characters in Act 3 that at first I was like, I don't know how this is going to work. I don't know if it's going to work. And they worked fantastic. I enjoyed the hell out of them. Sometimes it's a little hard to see, like most of these CG battles are. But when you get these great visuals and you do get to see the actions that's happening, it is breathtaking because I have not seen these kinds of characters on screen before, at least not in a big movie theater type setting. I've seen them kind of in like crappy, like, D-level horror films or D-level monster films kind of stuff. But in this film, these characters are awesome and definitely something. It does kind of take away or go away from the main story that we've been building up for the last hour 45 minutes, but it is fun to watch and I enjoyed it immensely. In terms, there's also going to be it's an MCU movie, so you got your cameos. I'm not going to say who's in it. If you've watched the trailers, you've seen two of them, but there is another cameo, or there's a few other cameos in the film. They're all awesome and funny in their own way. If you know the characters, you know exactly what you're going to get from them. There's also a new cute little character that's going to start to rival Baby Groot in terms of cuteness, especially with the audience that I watched it in. Everyone seemed to really enjoy that character. But that's the big thing about this film. As watching this with a relatively sold-out audience for COVID days, the crowd was energetic. They were laughing. They were enjoying. One guy had his hands up, at one point of the film, just really, really into the movie. And then there was one guy in the middle of the theater who literally was reading a comic book on his phone the entire time of this movie, which was really annoying. And at what level of nerdom do you have to be in a comic book movie theater, watching a comic book movie, and not watching the movie, but reading a comic book on your phone instead? Anyway, the crowd enjoyed the hell out of this film. They had a blast. They all stuck around for the two post-credit scenes. You have a mid-credit scene and an actual end-of-credit scene. Both of them are very important, and you need to stick around and watch them. Overall, it's a lot of fun. And the great thing about this story in terms of Shang-Chi, I want to see more. I want to see more Shang-Chi. I want to see more of this world. And it's one of those things where it's like, yes, we're going to see him probably with the Avengers and all this or the new Avengers and stuff like that. That's going to be great. I want to see more of Shang-Chi. I want to see a sequel or a trilogy of the Shang-Chi character, which we're probably going to get. But I'm excited about what we're going to get with this. And I think most people are going to be excited too. So going to my overall thoughts, if you guys are kind of hesitant about Shang-Chi because the trailers didn't really sell it on you, go check this film out. You will not be disappointed. And if you can see it in IMAX, see it in IMAX. I was not so lucky. But as I was watching the film, I was watching going, man, I wish I could have watched this third act in a IMAX type screen. You're going to enjoy it. Shang-Chi might become some people's favorites characters now. The film, personally, I think is going to potentially crack into my top 10 MCU films. I really, really enjoyed it. I'm definitely going to have to rewatch it at least one or two more times to get a little bit more feel out of it. But I enjoyed this film so, so much. So going to my overall score, I'm going to give Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings 89% out of 100, which is a A score. I hope you guys enjoyed this review. If you guys did, go and hit that like, share, and subscribe button to the channel so you guys stay up to date with all the latest videos that pop up on the Movie Crusaders. And of course, you can follow us on all the social media outlets you see below. Coming up next, I did see Vacation Friends on Hulu. I just did not shoot a review for it. I thought it was pretty funny. The first act is definitely better than the second act, but they are going to make a sequel. So if you guys really want to see a funny film with John Cena and Lil Howery, check that out. You guys will not be disappointed, at least for the first half of it anyway. Next week, we've got Cinderella also came out today on Prime. I don't know if I'm going to watch that or not. We'll see. You got Kate on Netflix. I'm definitely checking that out because of Mary Elizabeth Winstead. You got Malignant, the new James Wan horror film. That is coming out in theaters and HBO Max, so I'll definitely have a review for that. And of course, like always, we did take a week off because we needed to, basically reset our batteries after last week's episode. Brian, Michaels, and myself will be back for the Movie Crusaders once again, where we talk about 5 movies that came out during that weekend in movie history. So be on the lookout for all those reviews and go see Shang-Chi. You will not be disappointed. Until next time, in case I don't see you, good morning, good afternoon, and good night, Movie Crusaders.
You're still here? It's over. Go home.